Most people are arriving at the end of this year exactly the same as they started it. Same problems, same fears, same beautifully justified excuses. And though they may not say it out loud, they feel it. That strange weariness that isn't physical. That silent discomfort that appears when a year is ending. And you can't help but do an audit with yourself. Because the end of the year does not lie. It does not negotiate. It does not get distracted. The end of the year reveals. While some use it to celebrate and forget everything, others feel an internal pressure they can't explain. It's not sadness. It's not nostalgia. It is consciousness. Consciousness that time passed and you remain in the same place. And here comes the uncomfortable part almost no one tells you. If you close this year the same as the previous ones, the next one will not be different. It will be a continuation. The calendar does not change lives. Decisions do. The question is not, what year is coming? The question is, with what version of yourself are you closing this one? Because that determines everything that follows. January is not the start of anything if you don't decide differently today. People fool themselves believing a change of date produces a change of life. It doesn't work that way. Every January, you repeat the same ritual. Promises, lists, borrowed enthusiasm, and silent abandonment. February arrives, and everything returns to its place. It's not a lack of discipline. It is a lack of a real decision made when no one is looking. The end of the year is the only moment where you can't lie to yourself easily. Because the noise lowers, the distractions fade, and your life stands before you unfiltered. That's why it hurts. That's why it's uncomfortable. And that's why many prefer to wait for January, as if time would do the work they avoid. But listen to this with absolute clarity. If you do not make a firm decision now, January will only amplify what you already are. If you're disordered, you will have a disordered year. If you are confused, you will repeat confusion. And if you avoid deciding today, next year will decide for you. That is the truth no one wants to accept when closing a cycle. Change begins when you decide to close differently, not when the calendar changes its number. Today is the exact point where everything can change. Right now, there was a year end when I understood something no one had explained to me before. It wasn't a pretty moment. It wasn't inspirational. It was uncomfortable. I was at a low point in my life, working on things that weren't leading me anywhere, with the constant sensation of being busy but not advancing. No clarity, no direction, with that dangerous mix of weariness and resignation that many know but few admit. I remember sitting one night as the year was ending, looking at my reflection in a dark window. Outside, there were lights, noise, people celebrating. Inside, there was silence. And in that silence, a question appeared that I couldn't dodge. Am I going to be in this exact same place next year? It wasn't a philosophical question. It was brutal, direct, without consolation, because suddenly I understood that no one was holding me back. It wasn't the government. It wasn't the economy. It wasn't circumstances. It was me postponing uncomfortable decisions. That was the real blow, realizing I wasn't failing because I was incapable, but because I was indecisive. I had spent years telling myself it wasn't the right time yet, that next year will be different, that when I had more time, more money, more security, then I would make the necessary changes. But that year end, I understood something that deeply unsettled me. If I kept waiting for the perfect moment, I would repeat the same scene over and over. The same window, the same reflection, the same silent regret. That night, I didn't do anything spectacular. There was no epic music, no dramatic promises. I just made one simple, hard decision to stop lying to myself. I realized I didn't need to feel ready. I needed to feel responsible. Because when you don't decide consciously, you decide by default. And the default always returns you to the same place. That night, I understood the true pain wasn't being where I was. The true pain was imagining myself there a year later, knowing I did nothing when I had the chance. That was the breaking point. Not because everything changed immediately, but because something aligned within. And when that happens, the rest begins to move. After that breaking point, I understood something that completely changed my view of life. The problem was never a lack of talent, opportunities, or time. The problem was always a lack of clarity. Most people live with desires, not with decisions. They want to improve. They want to advance. They want to change. But they don't know what, when, or why exactly. And a mind without clarity is a mind weak against life. Your mind does not respond to vague intentions. It responds to precise instructions. When you lack clarity, your brain enters survival mode. It reacts. It gets distracted. It seeks immediate comfort. And that explains why so many people spend years busy without building anything real. Clarity is power because it eliminates internal noise. When you know exactly what you want, you stop negotiating with yourself every day. You no longer wonder, should I do it today or not? You simply act. Here is the truth few accept. If you cannot describe with precision how you want your life to be in 1 year, someone else will decide for you. The job you tolerate, the relationship you accept, the income level you justify, the body you neglect. It's not bad luck. It is a lack of direction. The subconscious mind works like a search engine. When you give it clarity, it begins to filter opportunities, people, and decisions aligned with that objective. When you don't give it clarity, it filters the known, the comfortable, and the repeated. That is why two people can live in the same environment and end up in completely different places. One is clarity. The other only has hope. And hope without direction builds nothing. That year-end, I understood that writing with clarity wasn't a motivational exercise. It was an act of personal leadership, putting in writing what I wanted, how I wanted it, and by when I wanted it was like turning on a light in a dark room. Nothing external changed immediately, but my mind did. I started to see what I used to ignore. I started to make decisions I used to avoid. And I understood clarity doesn't guarantee immediate success, but it eliminates the confusion that keeps you stuck. Without clarity, you repeat the past. With clarity, you begin to build the future. Before we continue, I want to ask you something important. If this message is making you a little uncomfortable, if you feel it's speaking to you directly and not letting you hide, let me know. Give this video a like so more people who need to hear it can find it. And write in the comments a single word, clarity. Not because I need it, but because when you write it, your mind registers it as a conscious decision. And if this type of message helps you think differently, take control, and close cycles properly, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. We're not here to motivate you for a day. We are here to help you think better, decide better, and live differently. Now, let's continue. Because what comes next explains why your life is the exact result of what you are doing today, not what you desire. This is where many people get truly uncomfortable, because this part leaves no room for fantasy or victimhood. Every result you have in your life is an effect, and every effect has a cause. Not sometimes, not in theory, always. If your finances are disordered, there are causes behind it. If your relationships aren't working, there are causes behind it. If you feel constant frustration, mental fatigue, or stagnation, there are also causes behind it. Most people want to change the effects without touching the causes. They want more money, but maintain the same habits. They want more peace, but keep feeding the same thoughts. They want new results without behaving like a new person. That isn't bad luck. That is incoherence. The law of cause and effect does not punish. It does not judge. It does not make mistakes. It only responds. It responds to what you do consistently, not to what you say you want. That's why there are people who seem to advance effortlessly, and others who feel life is always pushing them backward. It's not because some are special. It's because some understand that every decision is a seed. Every thought you repeat is a cause. Every conversation you tolerate is a cause. Every action you postpone is a cause. And those causes, over time, build your reality. Here comes a truth few accept with maturity. Responsibility is not blame. Responsibility is power. The moment you stop blaming the past, other people, or circumstances, you regain control. Because if you created the cause, you can create a different one. The problem is that creating new causes demands discomfort. It demands discipline. It demands saying no where you used to say yes. It demands stopping the justifications. And that, scares people more than staying the same. But understand this with total clarity. Next year will not be a surprise. It will be the exact result of the causes you are creating right now. If you don't change the cause today, don't complain about the effect tomorrow. This is the law that separates those who repeat their lives from those who transform them. This is where many people sabotage themselves without realizing it. After hearing hard truths, they want to compensate with extreme changes. All or nothing. 0 or 100. They decide that now they're going to transform their life overnight. 2 hours of exercise a day. Impossible diets. Unrealistic savings. Routines they've never sustained. And 2 weeks later, they collapse. Not because they are weak, because they chose the wrong approach. Real change does not work by explosion. It works by accumulation. Life transforms when you choose something so small you can't fail, and you do it every single day, even when you don't feel like it. That's what almost no one understands. You don't need heroic willpower. You need humble consistency. A 1% better each day seems insignificant, but sustained over time, it is unstoppable. That is the compound effect, not just in money, in character, in discipline, in identity. When you choose a micro habit and fulfill it, something more important than the result occurs. You begin to see yourself differently. You go from being someone who tries to someone who fulfills, from someone who promises to someone who executes. And that new identity begins to influence all your decisions. Do not underestimate that. Most people don't fail from a lack of information. They fail because they never change the image they have of themselves. A small habit sustained is a daily test of personal integrity. And integrity with yourself builds real self-esteem, not cheap motivation. Maybe your micro habit is waking up 30 minutes earlier. Maybe reading 10 pages a day. Maybe writing 3 things you're grateful for before sleeping. Maybe setting aside a small amount of money every day without excuses. It doesn't matter which one you choose. What matters is that it is non-negotiable. Because when you fail yourself, your mind learns not to trust you. And when your mind doesn't trust you, it self-sabotages. But when you fulfill, even in the small things, your mind begins to align with you. That is silent power. The compound effect does not shout. It's not noticeable in a week. It doesn't impress anyone at the start. But in 6 months, it changes your posture. In a year, it changes your life. And in 5, it makes the person you are unrecognizable. People want quick results because they don't trust themselves. Those who trust build slowly and win big. Don't try to change everything today. Change one thing and fulfill it tomorrow, then the day after, then the next week. That is how you build a different year without burning out in the attempt. There is a conversation that happens in your life every single day, even when you are silent. That conversation defines how you feel, how you decide, and how you act. And most people never stop to listen to it. It is your internal dialogue. The way you speak to yourself is not a minor detail. It is the invisible script that directs your life. If you constantly tell yourself you can't, that it's hard, that it's too late, that the same thing always happens to you, your mind takes that as an order, not as an opinion, as an instruction, and then it works all day to confirm it. That's why many people feel they sabotage themselves. It's not conscious sabotage. It is internal coherence. Your mind seeks to be faithful to the identity you yourself repeat. Here comes an uncomfortable truth. You don't treat yourself badly because things are going badly. Things go badly because you treat yourself badly. You speak to yourself with harshness, with contempt, with impatience. You remind yourself of past mistakes. You compare yourself to others and always come up short. And then you wonder why you have no energy, confidence, or clarity. If someone spoke to you the way you speak to yourself, you wouldn't let them stay in your life. But you give that voice total access. Changing your internal dialogue is not repeating pretty phrases in the mirror. It is a decision of self-respect. It is consciously choosing which thoughts you feed and which you cut off. It is stopping the repetition of stories that make you small. When you start speaking to yourself as someone who fulfills, who learns, who advances, your behavior begins to align. Not because you're fooling yourself, because your mind responds to coherence. Identity is built with repeated words and sustained actions. Every time you fulfill a micro-habit, you reinforce an identity. Every time you fail yourself, you reinforce another. That is why real change is internal before it is visible. You don't need to convince the world. You need to stop betraying yourself. When your internal dialogue changes, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your life changes. And that silent adjustment, though no one sees it, is one of the most powerful moves you can make when closing a year. Now we arrive at the point where most fall behind, not from lack of capacity, but from fear. Fear of failing, fear of making a mistake, fear of others' opinions, fear of discovering that if they really try, there will be no more excuses. Fear is not the problem. The problem is obeying it. Everyone feels fear when they are about to grow. The difference is what you do with it. The people who transform their lives are not braver. They're more honest. They know fear will appear, and they decide to advance anyway. Here is something you need to understand before closing this year. Fear does not disappear by waiting. It grows stronger. Every time you postpone an important conversation, decision, or action, you teach your mind that fear is in charge, and your mind learns fast. That's why fear expands over time. What makes you a little uncomfortable today paralyzes you tomorrow. Most people live trapped in a small version of their life, not because they don't dream, but because they systematically avoid what would make them grow. Jobs they hate, relationships that no longer work, ideas they never execute, all out of fear. But here is the liberating truth. Fear is a signal, not an order. It is a signal that you are about to cross an internal limit, that you're stepping out of the character you already know, that something new wants to emerge. If you don't feel fear, you probably aren't growing. You are repeating. Successful people don't wait to feel secure to act. They act, and the security arrives afterward. Because confidence is not thought. It is built. It is built by taking uncomfortable actions over and over. Small but real. Maybe for you today, the uncomfortable action is having a conversation you've avoided all year. Maybe it's saying no where you always say yes. Maybe it's starting something without having all the answers. It doesn't matter which one. What matters is that you stop postponing it. Here's a question that defines powerful year ends. What is that one thing you know you should do, but keep avoiding? Don't rationalize it. Your body already knows. The greatest regret doesn't come from what you tried and failed. It comes from what you never tried out of fear. The pain of the attempt lasts a moment. The pain of regret lasts years. If you want to close this year differently, you don't need to do 100 things. You need to do that one. The one that unsettles you. The one that challenges you. The one that demands you step out of the old character. That is the breaking point. Before talking about what's next, there's something you have to release. Because no one advances lightly carrying old resentments, accumulated guilt, or unresolved conversations. Most people try to start a new year with a heart full of pending accounts, and then wonder why they feel tired before even beginning. It's not a lack of energy. It's an excess of emotional weight. Closing a cycle is not throwing a party or writing a pretty list. Closing a cycle is releasing. Releasing broken expectations. Releasing past mistakes. Releasing people who are no longer there. Releasing even versions of yourself that no longer serve you. Here comes an uncomfortable truth. If you are still angry with the past, you are still tied to it. Resentment doesn't punish the one who hurt you. It punishes you every single day. And no, forgiving does not mean justifying. It does not mean forgetting. It means deciding that event will no longer control your present. Many people live repeating the same year because they never closed the previous one. They just covered it with distractions. That's why the end of the year sometimes hurts. Because everything unresolved knocks on the door again. This is where gratitude enters. Not as a pretty phrase, as a mental discipline. Gratitude does not deny what hurt. It takes away its power. When you focus only on what was missing, your mind locks up. When you acknowledge what was there, even in the midst of chaos, your mind expands. You cannot be grateful and resentful at the same time. You cannot be grateful and paralyzed at the same time. Gratitude returns perspective to you. It reminds you that you are still here, that you learned, that you survived, that you grew, even if not as you expected. Now, let's talk about the most difficult forgiveness. Forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for not having known, for having chosen poorly, for having taken too long, for having been afraid. Many demand retrospective perfection from themselves, as if they should have known what they know today. That is not demanding. That is unjust. Carrying guilt does not make you responsible. It makes you slow. To forgive yourself is to recognize that you did the best you could with the awareness you had in that moment, and to decide to do better now. Before closing this year, do this mental exercise. Think about what still weighs on you. That person, that mistake, that stage, and say to it in silence, I release you. Not because it was okay, because I want to move forward. When you release, you don't lose. You regain space. And space is what you need for something new to enter. If you have made it this far, it is no coincidence. Most people cannot bear to listen to themselves for this long. They get distracted. They run away. They look for something lighter. You didn't, and that already says something important about you. Now comes the moment that separates those who get inspired from those who transform. Action. Everything you've heard up to now is worth nothing if you don't carry it into a concrete decision. Not tomorrow, not next month, today. Because life doesn't change when you understand. It changes when you act. I want you to do something right now. Pause this video for a moment. Take a piece of paper or open the notes on your phone and write one thing. Not 10, not 5. 1. What is the specific action you will take in the next 24 hours to prove to yourself that this year end is different? Make it clear. Make it measurable. Make it uncomfortable. It could be a call, a pending conversation, a first step you've avoided for months. Whatever it is, write it down. Because when you write it down, you stop negotiating with yourself. You turn it into a commitment. Here is the final truth I want you to take with you. Your life up to today is the result of your past decisions. Your life from now on will be the result of the decisions you make from this moment. You don't need more time. You don't need more luck. You don't need to wait for everything to be perfect. You need to decide differently. Closing a year well is not looking back with nostalgia. It is looking forward with direction. Don't wait for January to be brave. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for permission. The version of you that you are building starts now with this decision. And when a year from now you look back, you won't remember this video. You will remember the moment you stopped postponing and started acting. That is the true closing of a cycle. That is the true beginning. Decide now. Act today. And make this the year you finally did what you knew you had to do. It all starts with you. Napoleon inspires.